What's going on, Babylonians? It's me, Songs of Rage, back with another Outriders WorldSlayer video to bring to you, and today we're going to actually be looking into the full breakdown of the Apocalypse tier system. Now obviously this is a massive change compared to obviously the World tier and the Challenge tier system that we already have in place in terms of vanilla Outriders, and this will be the brand new system that will be coming in to be able to take over what those were, and this will apply to vanilla as well as normal WorldSlayer DLC as well. So before we get into it, make sure you have dropped a like and a subscribe, it really does help the channel out, and let's have a quick look into everything we need to. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is, obviously, I've reset this back to Apocalypse Tier 1. I've managed to get to around about 25, 22, somewhere around there, something in the 20s level. So what we can actually do is look at the factors and look into the modifiers that actually do take place the higher we actually go up. So if we click into the Apocalypse tier, obviously Tier 1, we are dealing with 125% base health for enemies, standard damage multiplier, and it does give us some very small chances to be able to get Apocalypse gear. Now obviously you won't be able to grab any kind of Apocalypse gear if you don't have the DLC or WorldSlayer, because obviously that is tied to the DLC, so therefore you won't get anything like this. So maybe these stats will actually change depending on how it looks for you if you do own the vanilla game. So obviously this applies to epics, this applies to legendaries, and it actually does break it down a little bit more for us for the fact that of like the loot rarity bonus, all that kind of good stuff. So this is going to be enemy level 31 and item level 1. So basically the idea is obviously you get yourself up to level 30 through standard leveling, and then the Apocalypse tiers kind of come into it, being able to push the enemies even higher from there. So obviously as we then go through the tiers, obviously it does affect a little bit. So we've got like additional multipliers to enemy damage, we've got additional health coming their way, which just makes sense, and we do get the obviously the bonus towards like item levels, because obviously we are starting to level ourselves up. And then also in terms of that, we do now have a modifier for Ascension XP. So obviously if you get to level 2, you will be getting Ascension XP faster than you were if you were level 1. And then obviously your loot rarity and all that will just start scaling up with that. So obviously this is going to be the same going all the way forward, and you can see on the screen right now basically how these stats basically change. So we will be covering a few other modifiers that will be happening as we do actually go up. So as we go up this way, so obviously we've got 10. So as soon as you reach level 10, so obviously the enemy's level are now level 44, and the health bonus is now over double. The enemy damage multiplier is 120%, so it's not got too crazy just yet, and you now have a very healthy 10% chance to be able to get Apocalypse items from every single one of your drops. The Ascension XP multiplier has now gone all the way up to 382%, and your loot rarity bonus is now at 450%. Very, very nice, very, very helpful. So if you are actually one of the returning players, and you are actually coming back into this from having your CT15 characters and all that kind of good stuff, you will be starting at tier 15. So this will be your enemy level will be level 50, so obviously to match that as in terms of the gear that you are currently wearing, you do have a 12.5% chance of every single item that you do drop of being an Apocalypse item, and obviously the damage multiplier is at 120. If we have a look into this, so obviously we can see there we have a very healthy 803% Ascension XP multiplier, so just know that when you actually do start the campaign of WorldSlayer, you will be going very quickly through those first few levels of Ascension, just due to the sheer amount of XP that you're actually going to be seeing. So therefore you will actually get some, very early on, you'll get some points to be able to put straight into your class. Going from there, if we jump all the way up to level 20, this is where we start to see other things kind of like happen. So it does actually kind of start from 16. So I'll tell you what, let's cover it from there first. So obviously we do have the standard stuff all there, but we do have these additional modifiers that are going to be coming into place. So you'll notice on 15 that all we have is enemy health and enemy damage, and it does mention revive speed, but obviously that doesn't get touched, and it does mention status power, and that also doesn't get touched. If we go to 16 now, we also have the enemy health going up, we have the damage multiplier going up, we obviously have on top of that enemy weapon leech resistance up to 16%, and we do have enemy skill leech resistance on top of that. And basically what that means is that we're actually going to be healing less from our intrinsic healing, as well as any of the kind of weapons that we actually do have with our weapon or skills leech. So we'll actually be recovering less health as we actually do take part in the fight. On top of that, we also have elite enemy weapon leech, so therefore elites, as they damage us, will actually be able to heal themselves, so that's also something to be able to take note of. And we do have a status power penalty of 10%, so therefore if we are relying on ourselves for like damage over time or anything like that, so I'm looking at you, bleed devastators, you will actually get a 10% penalty towards that damage that you deal. On top of that, when it comes to revive speed, if you are playing co-op, that does mean that you're going to be receiving an 8% penalty towards reviving teammates, so it's going to take 8% longer to be able to actually perform that animation. In terms of the gains, though, we do actually get, obviously, we get our Apocalypse items bumped up to 13% for both epics as well as legendaries. Our Ascension XP multiplier is 932%, and our loot rarity bonus is 600%. On top of this, we do actually get some attribute bonuses, which actually does boost our status power up by 4%, and our healing received attribute bonus by 8%. So we actually do counteract a little bit some of the challenges that actually do come our way, but it also means that we will always still be at a slight detriment when it comes to that kind of thing. Obviously, as we go up, this will actually keep going, and obviously you can pause this video just to be able to obviously take advantage as to what we do. But what we're going to do is we're going to like pause along the way, and we'll just do some gates when it comes to it. So every 5 levels, we'll have a look at what the stats actually mean. So at tier 20, we are now dealing with 220% enemy health, 135% enemy damage, 24% leech resistance when it comes to both weapon as well as skill. Enemies, elites are still healing for 10% of the damage. Enemy critical damage reduction is now at 5%, so now we actually do less critical damage on top of that. And our status penalty is now at 20%. Our healing effects reduction is down to 24%. Our cooldown reduction penalty, so we are actually getting our skills to be able to cool down slower, is at 20%. And our revive speed duration is now up to 24%, so almost going to take us a quarter of the time longer to be able to actually pick our teammates up. On top of this, though, well, in terms of the bonuses, though, we are actually getting a 15% chance of Apocalypse items from every single drop. Our Ascension XP multiplier is now at 1,688%, which is pretty huge. Our loot rarity bonus is at 700%. Our max health upgrade bonus is at 120, so I can only assume that we're going to be getting 120 base health increase as well. I imagine that might get fed back into a few stats, and it might actually increase a little bit higher than that, but either way, that's going to be kind of negligible, really, when you think about it. Our weapon life leech attribute bonus is 9%, skill life leech is at 2%, which is interesting. It doesn't actually match. Our cooldown reduction attribute bonus is at 4%, so that does counteract some of the stuff on the left-hand side. Our status power and our healing increase as well. Scooting over to 25, so I haven't unlocked 25 just yet, but obviously the enemies will increase, and obviously we'll see all the status. Now, the interesting one to actually note that actually does take effect from this is that enemy weapon accuracy is also on there, which means that they have a 101% chance of their current accuracy to be able to hit you. So obviously there are times where enemies will actually be shooting towards your like mainly kind of riflemen, and there will be like shots that are actually missed even though they're stood right next to you and all that. This means that they have an additional 1% chance on their base accuracy to be able to actually hit you. So this, you know, at the moment is kind of small, but as we go up through the tiers, I can imagine this getting to some silly numbers, which means more shots are going to be coming at you, which means that you need to actually start healing or worry about your armor a little bit more. So overall, with the rest of the stuff, it is pretty standard, but obviously the stats have been increasing dramatically as we actually go through them. Obviously, we'll look at 30 now, and obviously this goes up even more. We have an additional 1% weapon accuracy when it comes to enemies anyway. We now have a 15% critical damage reduction when we get to this point as well. Enemies' health are borderline almost at that 300% mark, so that means we are going to be needing a lot more damage to actually be able to take everyone out. Obviously the healing is much reduced. Our revive speed is starting to near towards that 200% mark, which is going to mean that it's going to take twice the amount of time to be able to actually pick up our teammates, but obviously it's not just there just yet. Our 20% chance of being able to get apocalypse items, so this means it's going to be very kind of like consistent. It's starting to get to that consistency mark to be able to actually get some really good drops, and obviously start trying to get towards our min-maxing when it comes to our build. Ascension multiplier is just shy of 7,500 XP, which is pretty huge. Our loot rarity bonus is at 950%, and then obviously all the other attribute bonuses are kind of on the small side, but they help to be able to try and counteract some of the other stuff that's on the left-hand side. Our penultimate one that we'll have a look at is going to be 35, and obviously we now have an additional thing on here, which is going to be random critical chance, now being at minus 2.5%. So if you aren't already aware, you actually do have a small percent chance of being able to automatically hit a critical shot. It doesn't matter if you actually hit the head or not, you just have a small base chance to be able to do so. We now actually start reducing that, which means that we have to be a bit more accurate with our play, and therefore we can't actually rely on that modifier in the first place. In terms of other things as well, we've got status power that's going down by 70%, which is pretty huge. We've got cooldown reduction penalty at 70% as well, which is going to be pretty insane. It's going to be a massive nerf to most builds in the first place, so I can see firepower actually getting a little bit of a bonus from this. Our revive speed is at 180%, which is pretty crazy, so obviously if we are in co-op, we can't necessarily rely on our teammates to be able to actually pick us up. I wonder if this will actually affect self-revives. I'll do some testing. I'll let you know when it comes to that. And then obviously all the modifiers on the right-hand side are going to be pretty massive when it comes to loot. loot, because obviously we're making it a little bit more difficult for ourselves, and we actually have a 22.5% chance of apocalypse items as well. So overall, some very nice positives, but some very difficult negatives to be able to actually deal with. And then this just leads us on to the last one, which is going to be tier 40, which is the ultimate goal that we're actually trying to do in this DLC. And then this is what we actually have to deal with. This is going to be the worst kind of stats that we're actually going to ever have to deal with. So this means enemy health bonus is going to cap at 375%. Our damage multiplier for our enemies is 150%. Our weapon leech resistance is 50%, and same with our skills. So that means we're only going to be getting half the amount of health back that we should actually be doing. So I can imagine this would actually counteract quite a few builds, and I can imagine that Devastators are really going to start to struggle when it comes to like bleed healing from this kind of side of things. So I can imagine this is going to be a fun one to try and navigate around. We also have an elite enemy weapon leech at 10%, so this hasn't changed whatsoever. We've got enemy critical damage reduction at 25%, so therefore we are doing 25% less damage to critical areas. Enemy weapon accuracy is at 105%, random critical chance is at -5%, and status power penalty is at 100%. So it's going to be interesting to see if that means that we can't actually do any kind of status power. Are we actually going to be able to do any kind of like damage over time, which does worry me a little bit when it comes to the Flame Leper set. Once again, I'll get myself to level 40, I'll test how this kind of works and see what we can actually get up with there. Enemy health regen threshold is at 35.55%, healing effects reduction is at 50%, cooldown reduction penalty is a whopping 100%, so that means your skills are going to actually cool down twice as long. So obviously the cooldown reduction is going to be very key to be able to actually get those back. Revive speed duration is 200%, which is pretty huge. But then in terms of the gains, this is where it all kind of like ties in together. Obviously we have a chance to be apocalyptic for 25% for both, which is pretty cool. So every single one, you have a 1 in 4 chance of any kind of drop to be, as long as it's purple or legendary, to it actually be apocalyptic, which is pretty cool. Ascension XP multiplier is at 33,012%, which means we should be flying through some of those levels, but I also imagine by that time that you will actually be dealing with some higher levels in the first place, so you probably kind of need that. Loot rarity bonus is at 1200%, which means we're going to see consistently those epics and those legendaries to be able to drop. Our max health upgrade bonus is at 1,160. Once again, that's still, it seems like quite a small number for me, but I imagine that's probably going to get fed back into a few things. Our weapon life leech bonus is at 12%, our skill leech bonus is at 3%, which seems kind of low. Our cooldown reduction attribute bonus is 5%, so that just barely kind of touches the surface of what the cooldown penalty is on the left hand side. Our status power attribute bonus is 8% once again, and our healing received attribute bonus is at 12% as well. And you'll notice that quite a lot of these tiers actually do give you a legendary weapon as you actually do go through most of these tiers, and that's just obviously, it's similar to how like the level up where kind of rewards worked when you had world tier and challenge tier. It was there to be able to obviously as like a reward to obviously be able to benefit from going up an extra level, and obviously getting yourself something to be able to help you out with that first start to that level in the first place. So that pretty much wraps up everything that's in the Apocalypse tiers tree. I hope you've learned something useful for yourselves, and it's very eye-opening. Let me know your thoughts. Are you actually going to be grinding all the way to tier 40? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much to the Babylonian family, as always, for their continued support. And that just leaves me to say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on that next video.